Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and it has been a busy week in Giants land. It's been a busy week in the land of the NFL and everyone who likes to refresh their Twitter feed. Cranky Fan, how are you doing?
It's been a heck of a week, Grump. Traveled back and forth to England for a wedding. So, been out of the loop a little bit with things, but back here in the good old US of A and ready to talk about getting this team better, using the tool of free agency. So let's kind of dive into who we lost, who we've gained, new faces, and see how those, fit in short term and long term.
So we're still kind of mid assessing the roster here, so we're going to finish that up today. We're gonna finish up talking about the defensive backfield at the end of this episode and go over just sort of the state of the team. We'll add in the context a little bit of some free agent signings there, obviously with Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo, and then we're gonna kind of in the coming weeks reassess the roster in broad strokes in one quick episode. I think just going over the position groups that they've addressed and how we feel about them,
Hmm.
in the context of the rest of the roster in more detail. But first, I do want to go into this week of free agent news, and there's kind of a lot, so we're going to talk pretty briefly about this stuff.
Yeah, a lot of this information you probably already know. We're a weekly show. We're not a daily or an hourly or a minutely show. So we're not going to dig into super deep dives for each person, but kind of fit the context of the high points and what are the really significant moves that we made as opposed to just your transaction wire stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I'm sure everyone's heard like everyone's stats and how many games
Hmm.
played and all this other stuff on all of these people, but I haven't really had the time to like look at their, I don't know, like game film or whatever, but just like their game in general and like
Hmm.
how they
Hmm.
play. And so I want to have the extra week to look at that and see how I think that they are going to be used in this system here.
Hmm.
Um, we have guys moving over from completely different defensive systems into this one. Uh, so
Well, yeah, let's talk about just initial after a week plus into free agency, how do you think things are going? How do you know, any things kind of stand out for you right now at this point? On what your expectation was, how we were going to dig into free agency. What's your kind of high level assessment of how active we've been and what we've been getting and targets we've been getting?
well, that's kind of something I wanted to bounce off of you because uh, I mean I kind of look at this and I think in general terms, and I do want to go over this like in mostly next week's episode, I think.
Hmm.
Um, but just I'm kind of a fan of the way they've attacked everything and the positions that they've attacked. Um, Specifics with specific guys and specific contract details cut out of this conversation, but just the
Yeah.
type of guy that they targeted for which position, right? Because there's only so much cap to go around,
Correct.
and things like that. I've been a pretty big fan. My overall thought, though, is some of the positions that they have attacked with more money than other. I was a little surprised, not in a bad way, just not what I expected.
Mhm.
And I can't make a single off season like I can't comment on a single offseason aspect of what this regime does without thinking about the context of like, are they swinging for the fences to save their jobs? Right. So
Mhm.
that thought has sort of crossed my mind a little bit in their activity with free agency. I don't know. What about you though?
Yeah, I think if they were really swinging for the fences to save their jobs, I think there'd already be a very expensive quarterback on this roster already. And
That's
I
true.
know so that they did not do. And I think really that cap hold or just the thought of how much money we may potentially be spending on a quarterback obviously is influencing how they're going to spend on on the overall roster. And right now, you know, most likely we're not going to have a 30, 40, $50 million number attached to the quarterback position, which will give them more flexibility. Um, this goes along to kind of your thinking from last year. I've noticed just from the raw numbers, there's a very heavy influence on the defensive side of the ball. And, something that was not really addressed last year, they are addressing. They are trying to fill gaps in positions of strength, and they are trying to, especially in the secondary, fortify that up. Um, I see, three potential starters that they've picked up in free agency so far on defense. Um, Defense, we all know the offense and the issues this team has, and that until we really have a quarterback figured out, it's really going to be on hold. But they need to start addressing the defense, and I think they've been making their heavy waves right now. And keep in mind also, this is very important that free agency is only one of the legs to build a roster, and free agency will never solve problems. If you're swinging too much for free agency, it's usually disastrous results, or you're going for a quick sugar high, which you come off that sugar high really quickly. So, you know, so far so good. I know that the quarterback situation kind of, you know, put a lot of question in what they can actually do. But I think with the extra money, I think I so far it's kind of going the way I think I thought it was going to be going.
Um,
I
I like what they've done. Again, in general standpoint, I don't know that it was going the way I expected, but it was the way. A lot of what they've done is what we said we would do, right?
Yeah, and let me put one more caveat on this too is the Giants right now are probably one of the franchises that is least desirable as a free agent right now. I mean, remember, free agents ultimately, as we know with the Aaron Rodgers saga, it's ultimately up to the player where they want to go. And so you're kind of having a pretty heavy headwind of a team that had a terrible record last year, isn't expected to do much this year. Who knows who the head coach, the coordinators, the general manager might be this time next year. So all that uncertainty is not easy to be an attractive free agent, destination. The draft, kids out of college have no choice. They're drafted by us. They're coming here, but so that is an important headwind, which I don't think fans of a team are like, oh, they should come here. There's opportunity, but we look at it with giant covered glasses. Players don't, and I think that's something we have to fight against during this whole thing.
It's certainly a factor working against them. Yeah. Um,
Mhm.
I think that for a lot of free agents, Giants are going to fall into one of two categories. They're going to be in the land of opportunity for a player that has hit the free agent market and has had bad luck with injuries, or maybe was in a system that didn't best suit their traits. And this is their spot to be, on a 1 year cheap deal that works in the team's favor, but actually showcases what they can do to re hit the market in 1 year and get their payday. And the Giants are also a team with decently deep pockets that need starters in positions to play immediately, and a place for players who might be just able to take advantage of the current market of their position. You know what I mean? So like guys literally just going for a payday, perhaps a little bit past their prime, perhaps banking on more traits than production thus far in their career and like their young age. You know what I mean? So like they're kind of in this weird thing where it's not attractive for guys to be taking a discount to go to a winner for starters.
Oh,
And
that's
even
not happening. Yeah.
but even for like, mid-level guys, or guys that could be making more money with the Giants and just would rather make less to go somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Hmm. For
Because it's
sure.
a
Right.
negligible amount of money, and it's an expensive place to live and uproot your family and whatever.
Well, I just think a lot of the uncertainty too. I mean, I think that's a
That's
big
of
factor.
course, yeah.
Yeah, because
Um,
they may be signing up for a defensive scheme that may fit their skill set, and then this time we're talking about a completely different defense, and all of a sudden they fall out of favor, and then who knows what.
Positively true. I gotta say, um, nah, that doesn't matter. Never mind.
There you go.
I don't know.
Words of
I
wisdom.
was just gonna say, like, just think. As soon as you said that, my mind just started rifling through. This regime is like coordinator failures. You know what I mean? Like, just because you said that, like, we have some leftovers in the Wink scheme, right?
Hmm.
We have, not that Mike Kafka was like really the engineer behind the offense, but it just immediately made me think, like, if Brian Dable and Joe Shane do manage to turn this around, which is seeming increasingly unlikely, um, what a bizarre start to their career. Like, it doesn't really get too much more rocky than that in terms of, without being like an absolute joke. You know what I mean?
They're Bill Belichick potentially. He
Yeah.
had a similar start with Cleveland with his, or actually,
Did he?
a similar start. I'm sorry, a similar start with New England was pretty bad. And no, I'm
Is it?
sorry, Cleveland first. Cleveland first. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I didn't know that. Um,
Belichick in Cleveland.
I knew that. I didn't know he had a rocky start with his coordinators and stuff.
Yeah. I'm just saying, just overall, just kind of, eh, pretty much a failure to begin with, and then re-salvaged his career and became obviously what he was. That was kind of more what I was going at.
Oh, I see what you just general.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But this
Um,
is such a weird thing too, because remember, Brian Dable is 2 years removed from being Coach of the Year.
I know.
It's such a. I mean, if you're looking at like a career trajectory of kind of like here, and then we'll see. So it's very interesting to see how this this ultimately gets salvaged, whether it's with this team or another situation.
I want to go over the free agent signings that the Giants have made thus far, and we'll just kind of go through them. I'm just going to rifle through and make a
Yeah.
passing comment on each one.
Hmm.
I'm going to go back a little bit.
Hmm.
The Giants re-signed Casey Kreider, their long snapper, to a one-year deal for $1.5 million. He's about 34 years old. My basic motto here is special teams. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right. Continuality is good.
Sticking with special teams, this is a bigger one. Punter Jamie Gillen signed for a 3-year deal for about $9 million. He is currently 27 years old, so that would keep him signed roughly until he's 30. I don't believe we have contract details of a breakdown just yet. Just a couple of things about some incentives and bonuses. But any thoughts?
A little surprised. I kind of mixed about him. You want consistency in a quarterback and a kicker, and I felt sometimes he wasn't quite consistent. So I was a little surprised that, a 3-year investment in a punter is quite a while. So a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, so I was kind of wondering about how the contract is broken down myself, because I kind of feel the same way in terms of my surprise. I don't know if it's I don't know. I don't know enough about the punting game to really be like I have a strong feeling about him. But the things I know about him is that he has a very strong leg. It seems like there were less touchbacks the last couple, it seems like
Well,
he's gotten a little bit better over the time without me really knowing much of
well,
anything. But it's
well.
so hard to
Remember,
tell. The special team stinks. So
well. Also remember one thing: there'll be less touchbacks because the offense was so bad that how many
true.
times were we punting from like
The
the
full
45? And
yeah.
also our coaching, it was a little erratic, but Dable was going for it quite a bit on fourth down
Also
this year
true.
too.
Yeah.
So that might be kind of for that eye test.
Yeah. So I'm interested, but I think 3 years, $9 million is still sort of a minimal investment anyway.
Yeah.
The Giants re-signed tight end Chris Manhertz to a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. 32 years old, blocking tight end mostly with some level of competent hands, just not much of a route runner or mover in space. I actually listed this as a potential just fill the room kind of thing. Get a blocking tight end. Fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's a rounding error on the cap, so fine.
Um, here's a we'll start going whaling here. The Giants signed cornerback Paulson Adebo to a 3-year, $54 million contract. He is 25 years old, coming off of a broken leg, as everybody knows. Former New Orleans Saint. He is got to be penciled in to be starting opposite Deontay Banks next year, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think these are the types of moves I think teams like the Giants have to do. They're a little bit, you take a bit of a risk. He had the broken leg, and it's, you're taking a bit of a gamble with someone like that. But I think we have to be in a situation where we have to take those shots. So, let's see. What is it? Is he expected to be 100% come at the beginning of the season, or?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, a broken leg, I don't know how. I don't think it was like a compound fracture or anything, but like
Mm-hmm,
most broken bones, his was a fibula, I think. So we're not talking about like a femur here, which
mm-hmm,
would be
mm-hmm.
pretty rare for a 25-year-old to break. You're talking about like maybe 12 weeks in a cast, right? And then just
Yeah.
some atrophy. So
Hmm.
even if he broke it yesterday, I would say he was probably good to go for training camp. So
Okay, then good. Yeah. So maybe we got it. We maybe got like a couple of shaved off a tiny bit of salary because of me, but yeah, we got him. I definitely feel better about the back of the secondary now having him back there for sure.
yeah. Dr. Grump here. Did I say 12 weeks, by the way, in a cast? Definitely 6 weeks in a cast for most broken bones.
12 weeks, jeez.
Yeah, I don't know if I said that or if I'm just tripping. But
You said it. Thank you, Dr.
yeah,
Quack.
yeah, no, six weeks in a cast. I would say at most maybe with some extra recovery time, like 10 weeks. But even that's crazy. Um, my only so here's my thing. I love this. I think that this is a great move. I hope that maybe they have learned their lesson, but I don't really like drafting corners to be starters. I think if you're really using the draft correctly, which you can't always do in every scenario,
Mhm.
you inherit a bad roster, you need to use all of the tools at your disposal to build your roster. And that means sometimes drafting guys to be starters that may not be able to do it. And I'm not saying Deontay Banks can't do it, but I I like getting your starting corners on the free agent market. I know that it's more expensive that way, but those guys are veterans. You know that they can hang in the league. If you're using the draft correctly, you can replace them via the draft, but with no pressure for corners to start right off the bat. I just, that's just how I think.
Yeah, it's like drafting a high school pitcher. You know, the path to the major leagues, you don't know. I'd rather personally get my pitching as a free agent because I know what they can do, or even
Right.
drafting a college guy because I there's a greater chance of predicting their success at the different levels higher up that they are. It's a very volatile position, and a lot of guys that are the best kid in their high school in their state never even sniffed the major. So that's kind of how I feel about it, and I'm on the same page with you.
Yeah, I think that this is the right move. I wasn't really sure that they were going to go to town on this position. I don't know if they really changed their philosophy or if they feel like their back is against the wall after the year Deontay Banks had. I'm not really sure. Obviously, I'm not sure what they're thinking at all. But I think targeting Paulson Adebo was pretty smart. I mean, this is an athletic person with a lot of traits, and you're taking a little bit of risk on the injury, but I don't know.
So, looking to your crystal ball, I mean, who is going to be lined up against wide receiver one? Banks or him?
Oh, I think it's got to be a Debo.
I think so too.
I mean, obviously they're going to get a feel for who these guys are as players and perhaps the type of number one receiver that they're going up against week to week might alter that theory.
Hmm.
I'm not sure, but Adebo is just a much more confident corner in my opinion.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that that's most of what I want in someone lining up against a number one receiver.
Confidence is just as important as technique or and skill set.
Yeah. All right. I don't want to labor too much on him because we're going to talk about him
Yeah,
later. But the
yeah.
Giants also signed Roy Robertson Harris to a 2-year, $9 million deal. He's 31 years old. Sort of a defensive tackle. This is kind of I don't know. I don't feel that strongly about this, but this is like a veteran depth guy. It's just kind of a lot of money, $9 million for what I think of him as a player. I think um I'm not entirely sure how they're going to use him just yet. I want to watch more film of him, but he doesn't really pop off as someone that just off the page. Again, someone I don't know, I'm not super familiar with. It's a little
Same.
bit more money than I thought.
Yeah.
Um, But again, the investment in the defensive line, and there's some others we're going to go over, right in line with kind of what we were thinking, right?
Yeah, I mean, so far their plan is kind of going to what are, if we were GMs, I think we even said something about what would be our attack moves for
Yeah.
handling phrases is like that side of the ball. And, my mantra is always as close to the ball as you can get, work your way out. And they have definitely done that with this, you know, how they've been trying to fortify the depth on the defensive line, seems to be an
I,
major attack point.
I would even say in the nature in which the contracts they gave too. There's a couple other guys we're going to go, but just in terms of the length and what kind of player they are and where they're on the line and where they are in their careers is a little bit in line with what we were talking about.
For sure.
Huge one on the offensive side of the ball. Darius Slayton got a 3-year deal worth $36 million. 28 years old, been the leading receiver for this team for years now.
Yeah, low bar, but yeah.
Sure is, but I don't know. I feel like you probably have stronger opinions than me about this. I think you think a little bit less of him than I do, and I don't really think that I think very much of. That's such a shitty thing to say. I don't think that he's like the greatest wide receiver on earth, and I don't think that I'm a homer of his just because I'm a Giants fan. I just think that he's a strong wide receiver too, and this is. I don't know. I mean, it's less than T. Higgins got, right?
Yeah, I mean, to me, on a good offense, he's a pretty decent number 3 wide receiver. This is not a very good offense yet, and if he's our number 2 wide receiver, fine. He knows the offense. It's nice to have him coming back. My opinion has gotten a little better of him over the years. I was pretty strident against him. The untimely drops and stuff, they're hard to ignore and they're hard to get that taste out of your mouth. That seems to be something that's been under control with him. I think, the last couple of, years we say, well, he's been the leading receiver. And again, I think that's more of a question of the low bar that's been set by, the rest of this team going, obviously if, Malik Neighbors, he is your wide receiver 1 going forward, and he's barring injuries is going to be the most receptions, the most yardage, the most touchdown guy on this team going forward. I'm still lukewarm on him. I think he's a nice piece, but I would like another wide receiver to be like the wide receiver 2 on this team. I don't think we're done yet.
Oh, I don't think we're done yet. I don't know that I want another wide receiver to be a wide receiver 2 on this team, the 2025 team. I do think that you stand to upgrade whatever. I want to add a body to the room for sure.
Yeah, let me clarify. That's exactly what I'm thinking. I mean, again, there is a public sentiment that it's this year or bust for this for the powers that be on this team. I'm looking at it as this is not this year or bust for what we're building with this team. I'm not looking playoffs this year. I'm not looking Super Bowl this year. So, there's some positions and some guys that I want to spend a lot of money on because it'd be a waste on this team right now. Tell me who my quarterback is before I can tell you what kind of offense we're going to design around that quarterback. So that will tell me what type, if I'm going to go for an elite receiver, what type do I want to get? So he's fine for now.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you why I think the signing it was the move for the Giants. It was is the easiest move. You've already got, talks with him right in the building. B, ability-wise, he fits the bill. He's not excellent. He's not below average. He fits the bill. C, you got him at market value. This is probably what he would get anywhere, okay? So this is already working out pretty well. D, I know everyone is going to think that I'm overvaluing this, but you have moved on from Daniel Jones. Who are the leaders of this offense?
I
think you have a leader of the Andrew Thomas probably has a good leadership role in the offensive line group, right? Your tight end group.
He's also missed a lot of games in the last.
I'm going through. Yeah, I get that, but I mean, you have someone in the locker room that's familiar with the system. He's been here the whole time. He's probably got a commanding voice in the locker room because of who he is, right? I think Andrew Thomas is that guy. I think, to some extent, Daniel Bellinger, you have that in the tight end room. He's familiar with the room. He knows how to make things work in Dable's offense. Whatever. He understands the offense, where to line up. He can help any Theo Johnson, whatever. Your running backs room, you have Devin Singletary back there over Tyrone Tracy, who's probably the future, right? So again, you have this sort of relationship everywhere. There's no veteran of the system in the wide receivers group. I mean, you sort of have Wan'Dale Robinson, but he's the inside guy. You have the outside guy who used to be the one here.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
And
I think this is just the easiest move. It's the smartest move. It probably helps you. You do have to perform this year. You know what I mean? Like we were saying, it's not, playoffs or bust, but you have to show that you are ready to coach this team ready. You know what I mean? Like you're not a mistake as a head coach or whatever, and you got to get off to a fast start. If you're adding young pieces to this offense, especially a fucking quarterback, you know what I mean? Like getting the veteran wide receiver, like the wide receivers group has got to be tight. O-line got to be tight. The quarterback's the only one allowed to make mistakes.
right, and especially that as we're still waiting on who that quarterback is, and we start hearing names that are not marquee names, and we're looking at either career backups or career guys that are like on the treadmill, or on the scrap heap at this point. Kind of, you need to be tight on all these other positions on the offense. They need all the help they can get.
The Giants also signed a linebacker who's mostly special teams, I believe. I know nothing about him. Chris Board, 2 years, $5.7 million, 29 years old. He must be really good. That's kind of I mean, maybe I'm an idiot, but he must be really a special teams ace for 2 years, $6 million at 29, right?
I would think so, yeah.
Giants also signed swing tackle James Hudson, 2 years, $11 million, 25 years old. I gotta be honest, I don't know enough about James Hudson to say how I feel about him, the player. He's a little bit younger than I thought they were going to do for the swing tackle thing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were going to try and go for an established veteran there that, maybe not the best foot speed, but will always be in the right place kind of thing. But they attacked it. Yeah, I don't know. You have thoughts on James Hudson?
I don't. I have more thoughts on the other tackle that we have because I
thought so. All right.
I know who he is.
All right, so we can jump ahead a little bit here. Stone Forsythe, former Gator and Seahawk, I believe, 27 years old. I did draft prep on him. Didn't think he was very good.
Yeah, well, he was the left tackle on a pretty explosive Gator team in 2020. The team with Kyle Trask and our old buddy Kadarius Toney was on that team. He was a guy that they redshirted as a freshman, and he kind of slowly developed, and all of a sudden, by the time he was a senior, was wow, this guy finally has overachieved at this point. Got drafted second round, third round, maybe with Seattle.
Really?
I think he was kind of a higher draft pick.
I can't remember. I'll look it up while you talk.
Yeah, I don't remember. I'm getting old. But that might be the guy that becomes more of the swing tackle as well.
Yeah, I think the fact that they double dipped at the position was not only smart, but not unexpected either. Because but they certainly, I don't know what Stone Forsythe's contract details are at all. I don't even know if we have the length of contract yet. It may be like pending a physical or something. But 2 years, $11 million for James Hudson tells me that they view him that way. You know what I mean?
So I am getting senile. He was a 6th round pick.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought he was in the middle rounds. But that only means what people think of you coming out of college.
Right.
You know what I mean? I didn't think that he looked like a starter coming out of college. So that doesn't mean shit.
Right.
You're 100% in your assessment that he could be more of the swing tackle, or it may even be that they just got a backup left tackle and a backup right tackle this year, and I don't know, the market for the backup left tackle is not that great.
Yeah, and they needed backups at both positions because we were putting in guys that were not even tackles, and so.
100%. I mean, it may
Let's attack
be
it.
that they are. If they're doing what I'm about to say, then they're doing everything exactly the way I would do it. Okay, but there's no guarantee that they really view it that way. They are setting themselves up so that they don't have to draft a tackle to be depth and eventually be the replacement this year, but they did not sign anybody that prevents them from doing that if one falls to them. Would you agree with that?
I think that's a fair assessment too.
Yeah, and I think they sort of did that on the defensive line too. So let's jump to the defensive line a little bit here. They signed. I'm gonna go two guys right here. Okay, three guys. I'm sorry. Chauncey Golston, 3 years, $20 million, 27 years old. Kind of played in two different positions on the Dallas Cowboy defensive line, depending on who was the coordinator. They also signed Jeremiah Ledbetter to a 1 year, $1.7 million contract at 30 million years. 30 million.
30 million years.
30 years old.
Wow.
And they also signed edge rusher Victor Dimukeji, 25-year-old. I think that is also pending a physical or something. We don't have any details yet. So go ahead. Your general thoughts on how they attacked the defensive line and any of those guys you want to talk about.
I want more of your assessment of Golston. That's the one that's interesting to me. The other guys are depth pieces or battling. They're going to be battling for different depth ones. I want to talk. I want you to talk about Golston to me because that's the one that's really going to make a potential impact on this defensive line.
I think that he gives them some swing versatility, right? I think that he's not going to be able to pass rush much from the outside, I don't think. But he is a pretty good run stopper. But I do think that he flashes some inside versatility and pass rush downs, right? So I think if you're in third and long, I do think that you can put like Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, him and Dexter Lawrence on the line and generate like a pretty formidable pass rush.
So it sounds like that's the fit that we really needed because we have the outside covered. With the outside edge rush,
Mm-hmm.
we needed more fortification inside. So this is kind of a perfect fit if we utilize them that way.
If we utilize him that way, I think that that's something that he can kind of give. Now he's not really, I wouldn't say like a traditional defensive tackle. Mm-hmm. That can get pass rush from the inside. He is sort of, I mean, he looks like a tweener, you know what I mean? Which is not really the same thing, mm-hmm. right? So he's not going to win down in, down out as a defensive tackle. And if you've misassessed what they're going to do on offense, he could get blown out, whether that's on the edge or on the inside. So I actually really like the complement of guys that they've got because they got him. Jeremiah Ledbetter is just a stonewall run stuffer. And the only pass rush you're going to get from him is him throwing his weight forward and just moving his feet. But he's established that way.
So we're thinking he's not necessarily a 3-down guy. He's going to be more of a situational guy they put in.
Absolutely, but he's not DJ Davidson, is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Right. Thank fucking God, right? and Victor Dimukeji, I just want to have a brief conversation about him as a young pass rusher. I don't know a ton about him, but the Giants signing him a day after the Eagles signed Azeez Ojulari.
Let's discuss that.
So I think that Azeez Ojulari as a type of player is exactly the missing piece in what they've kind of filled out here. He's a pass rusher that specialist. That's where he really excels. Who isn't terrible in the run game. He just, it's not like he's too weak for the run game. He's not just a speed rusher.
It's not his forte.
But he's not bad at it either. I would say he's slightly below average as a run stopper. But in the role here can be situational in his time, and his biggest drawback is just his injuries. And I think that that's just the right guy, where it's just like his highlights are starter quality. He doesn't really have lowlights that are horribly below starter quality, you know what I mean? But really his lowlights are he's just not on the fucking field, which is the perfect kind of guy to add into your rotation. Mm-hmm. He went cheap, and I just think people are calling back to this. They should have traded him for whatever they could get, because anything is better than letting him walk, which I agree with, but I didn't think his market value was going to be a lot, and I thought that they could just get him back, and they absolutely could have, I think. Or is my assessment that he doesn't want to just be here anymore, that he signed for that low. What do you think?
I just don't think he wants to be here anymore. I think he sees two guys that are clearly ahead of him in the rotation, and I think he thinks himself as I'm a starter in this league. When I'm my my performance based upon my usage is high enough that if I'm given the chance to play as a starter, play every down, I can put up some tremendous numbers. And I don't think he would get that opportunity here. So I think it was just a path for him to go somewhere else and to try to.
I mean, but going to the Eagles, I don't really know that he gets that shot as a starter. I mean, he gets a shot to be maybe in better situations on his time on the field because his team won't suck as much. Or...
Yeah, I mean, just because doesn't mean he's always making the right decisions. If he has a plan for what he wants to do, doesn't mean he's making the right decision for that. But I think that I think sometimes it's just time to move on. I think he just decided he wanted to go somewhere else and try to do it. And you know, I think people are more pissed off that it's Philly he went to. Again, another guy. It seems like it's a yearly train of people coming from New York down to Philly to play there. But you know, I think I see what he was thinking by not coming back here.
But I guess my point was, is the mistake on the Giants' end for not re-signing him, or was that bridge just burned and they really should have traded him? Because if that's the case, if there was no relationship left there, I mean, I don't know if they know any of this shit. I'm just saying, if you know that detail, then the answer is trade him at the deadline, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. We don't know what the real offers were. We don't know anything.
That's
So
true.
and again, if you're
The
getting
reports were a sixth, which is
okay,
nothing.
you know what a 6th round pick is? The best case scenario of a 6th round pick.
It's like
You can
Darius
pack it.
Slayton.
You can package it with a couple other picks to try to move up for something else in the draft. It's kind of
Yeah,
a
but
it's a
not even
building
much.
block one.
It's a building block to move up in the middle rounds too. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
So what are we really talking about?
I don't think
So
it's much. So again, I don't,
I
I don't,
I think
I don't know.
I think from the Giants' perspective, I think I'd rather just roll the dice and see if I can re-sign him at the end of the year than, if I trade him, he's never coming back. So, maybe there's a hint they thought maybe they could possibly do it. But again,
True.
free agency is ultimately about the player where he wants to end up too. So that, you know, I would have done the same thing if I was the Giants. I think I'd rather roll the dice and see if I can get him back.
Did you think that it was surprising that the Giants went out and got Javon Holland? 3 years, 45.3 million for a 25-year-old safety with very little ball production, by the way.
A little surprised. A little surprised. I thought, if you're looking at the secondary, they would attack like the cornerback position, which they did. This was a little surprising. He didn't have a very good year last year. He had showed promise, previously, but I think part of that was because of a different defensive coordinator may not fit what his best skill set is, but seemed a little high.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that they went wailing at the safety spot, but maybe it makes a little bit more sense the more we dive into it. But a couple other signings. I'm going to go with the most important in my opinion first. Greg Van Roten resigns, 35-year-old right guard from last year.
I think we predicted that, didn't we?
I said that I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah.
Again, this doesn't preclude you from drafting at this spot and upgrading it for the future or even for right now. It doesn't stop you from doing anything. In fact, if Greg Van Roten ends up being the first guy off the bench at right guard, then that's an ideal situation. But if he has to be the starter, he's not there are very few offensive lines in the league that have a 5-star playing every single spot.
And then playing for 17 games.
Exactly.
17 games.
So yeah, exactly. So there's always a 3-star somewhere in the roster which gets covered up by talent everywhere else, and it's the one quote unquote weak spot on good teams, and Greg Van Roten is a serviceable starter. I am perfectly happy with the serviceable starter. He can't for 2025. He can't be the long-term solution, obviously, but they didn't sign him for that.
No, he's a stopgap guy for continuity for what we had last year, and even if you do draft his replacement, that doesn't mean you're forced to start him right away, and he may not be quite ready.
The Giants re-signed their returner Emir Smith-Marset, 1-year deal, $1.4 million, 25-year-old. I'm going to say this now, but probably we'll talk about it more next week. As as much as I don't care about special teams, they are investing in it exactly the way that I want them to. They are not ignoring the returner position, and they're not returning. They're not ignoring silly things like overthinking the long snapper position, or they're investing in this punter that they've worked on or whatever. I'm cool with this.
My philosophy with special teams is they don't need me to win games. They just can't lose me games.
Yeah, but that's what they've been doing. They've been dicking around with the special teams
Yeah.
all of last year. Like, I'm happy to see this is just, we just addressed it. It's the begin. You know what I mean? We're in March, and I'm not even thinking about it. It's like, cool. This is mostly off my radar. That's why I'm happy. You know what I mean? Like,
Correct.
I'm not worrying who the hell is returning. Well, I mean, we say that, and the Giants had Khalil Pimpleton in camp all of last year, and they just cut him anyway. So maybe I'm wrong.
Still need to address kicker.
We still need to address kicker. We need to talk about kicker too. Graham Gano's giant elephant in the room. How do you address? Serious question. In generalities, you don't have to name a guy, but are you going for the young big leg? Are you going for a raw project? Are you going for the veteran stalwart? Are you going dumpster diving for anyone that can kick for cheap? You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to get no production from Graham Gano because he's hurt all the time, you might as well not pay him and just deal with the guys off the street you were using to replace him, right?
I don't think you dumpster dive, because I think, I don't want to be in a situation like I was last year where either not having an available kicker or having just, someone I just can't count on dictate how I'm play calling and game situations. So kicker is important. I think you always try to have a good kicker. If you're not a good team, that kick may decide a win or a loss. If you're a great team, hopefully you're scoring more touchdowns and it's not that big of a concern. So I would try to put a little more money into a kicker than just dumpster diving. But we're paying a lot of money for Graham Gano, but the guy isn't available anymore, and he's not kicking at the level he was previously too.
The thing is with kickers is I feel like they're so infrequently just signed as free agents for anything more than just like 1 year deal. You know what I mean? Like, just for instance, these are the names that are free agents this year. Okay. Nick Folk, Matt Prater, Eddie Pinheiro, Michael Badgley, Joey Sly, Austin Seibert, Greg Joseph, Cade York, Spencer Schrader. You know what I mean? These are the types of guys that are around there. They're either no one you've ever heard of, or the same guys that fill in for 3 weeks when a kicker gets hurt in Baltimore or Tennessee. You know what I mean?
Again, not to wear my orange and blue glasses, but Eddie Pinheiro, I thought he was pretty decent last year.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah.
Even if he is, my point is that like there's maybe one guy that you're swinging for the fences on the market. A lot of times these are like trades for like a team completely trashing stuff, or dumping contracts like the Giants are basically going to be doing with Graham Gano. They're a team that invested in a guy. They can't afford him anymore, or something else happened and they just stink. They need money elsewhere, and they just dump a contract somewhere else. So,
well, maybe it's worth it just to go after a really good kicker out of college. I mean, this kicking from college to the pros, that translates pretty close, doesn't it?
I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that question. I know that every time one is drafted like insanely high, they do bad. Or at least lately.
For every Janikowski, there's 100 guys that are just that gets GMs fired type of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying draft one in the third round, but
Well, I mean, we don't know. The Giants use that international pathway program for these guys a lot too. They had that kid from Rutgers who they are using with the IPP, because I guess he's from Ireland or whatever. McAtamey. He actually looked pretty good last year. Like, maybe that's just their plan. Maybe they're just gonna bring in a Nick Folk or something like that for. I guess he made like a kind of a shitload of money for a 40-year-old last year, but I don't know. Maybe they bring in Greg Joseph or something like that.
Yeah, I think my point is
and
that
they compete with him and they just let him win.
Yeah, I think my point of this is, if you're a mediocre team, I think kicking is more important than being a good team. And I think it should be addressed. And I think you can get you may have to spend a little more on the market for kicker, but again, it's not going to break your bank to get a good kicker.
So let's talk a little bit about this team and their defensive backs. This is a pretty quick conversation because it's really just two positions for the most part.
Yeah.
The cornerback room. You want to start there, or you want to work from back to front?
Let's start with the cornerbacks. So
Okay.
that's the big
So the big
the big
elephant in the
talk.
room, right? Like you have Dante Banks. Adoree Jackson is gone. You signed him late last year. It was pretty clear neither side really wanted to deal with each other. Neither side was getting what they wanted from the market, or whatever. Um,
It was a marriage of convenience that just didn't.
it wasn't even
It's
a good
over.
marriage. It still
Right.
sucked.
Right.
Wasn't that convenient? So you have Deontay Banks had a terrible year last year in some regards. In other regards, statistically he looked a
Yeah.
little bit better.
Yeah. I think he was terrible because of just what he was facing. I mean, he played
Yes.
against a lot of really really good wide receivers,
Yes
and
and no. I mean, you still had the effort things that happened in the middle of the
I
year.
was I was getting to that.
Oh, sorry.
That part of it is, he had a steep learning curve playing against, the best of the best, but he didn't help himself either.
Hmm.
And that it's definitely on my radar of a concern with him. That is he going down the prima donna path? Is he that sensitive that he can't handle criticism from coaches? Is this coaching staff going to fire coaches because he's a prima donna or not? So it's definitely on my alert for this year. This is a very important year for him, in my opinion. Are we gonna continue to invest in him, or are we just gonna, look at next year as, going back to the well in the draft or free agency again to move on for life after him, or are we going to invest in him going forward?
Yeah, I mean, he could be a bust for the Giants eventually, where he for first round pick that ends up being like a really good third cornerback, or like just
Mhm.
a average second cornerback or something like that. I don't know. In that sense, based on where he's drafted and what they invested in him, that's a bust. But that's still a super important part of a winning team.
Sure.
And that doesn't have to be the Giants. I just mean that would be Banks's career, and they still have to figure out where he is, because they know he's not a one, at least not yet. Can he grow there? It's looking a little iffy, like that could ever be a possibility, but
But the important thing is the urgency for him to be a one may not be there anymore.
exactly. They can dial it back. They have to hone in and figure out where he is. And I
Hmm.
think adding Paulson Adebo across from him will help with that. But
Hmm.
this isn't like, it's not a slam dunk, but it's a pretty good guess. And I also think that with Bowen's system, if they're really doing it right, they're getting pressure with their front four enough where I don't think their cornerbacks have to be superstars, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've been screaming for all along. Is make your life easier for your back end by your front end doing their job and making the quarterback, an extra half second release the ball before he wants to, or have to check out of a play he wants to because of pressure. So it's all units working together, and it starts up front. Always starts up front for me.
Right, and to her credit, like people think Deontay Banks did better in his rookie year, and in some ways he did, um, but that was a defense that brought pressure. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, the pressure was somewhat manufactured because you're blitzing a lot and it's really really exotic all the time, and you're blitzing all the time.
Hmm.
Um, but it's pressure is pressure. The point is that if Bowen's defense can generate the same amount of pressure as Wink's without having to blitz nearly as much, then you get the same benefits without the risk of leaving holes.
Exactly.
So,
Yes. And also to hopefully elevating the talent level in the front too will just natural ability as much as scheme will do.
last point on Banks. Are you worried about him long term as an individual?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah, I am a little bit too.
Yeah.
I really don't
All
want
those
to because
classic.
he seems like a guy I would like, but
I'm seeing those green shoots of issues that I've seen over and over again with guys that have been on this team and other guys in the league. And, again, I'm not out and out like, oh God, he's Odell Beckham the third, but my antenna's up right now. What?
he can't see me, guys. So, anyway,
What did you do?
nothing, nothing. That if that wasn't an innuendo, uh, my
That
antenna's up. Anyway, You don't think that sounds like an innuendo at all?
It wasn't meant to be.
I know that.
That's literally a no pun intended. But where was I going with that?
I don't know. That
You
was
can edit. You can edit this part out. But what
no.
what,
It was
what, were
just
you- what were you
funny.
thinking? Oh, okay.
That you don't
I
think
thought you
that
were
sounds
laughing.
like you just like got a stiffy like my antenna's up.
I was thinking kind of that the spaceman and the Bugs Bunny guy.
What like
His
Marvin the
thing.
Martian?
Yeah. I thought you were laughing at my Odell Beckham the third joke. But
I
all
did
right.
laugh at that too.
Okay, good. But let's edit that to you laughing at the Odell Beckham the third joke.
Anyway, all right. So, but here's the thing. So we feel iffy about Banks. He's signed through 2026. You still have a fifth year option available to you if you want to exercise it. But behind him, which we think is shaky, you have Cordell Flott signed through 2025. You have Trey Hawkins signed through 2026. What is it? Anthony Johnson, Green. You have nothing. You have
Yeah,
nothing back there. Cordell Flott hasn't really developed into anything. You knew when you drafted him that he was really young. He's still only 24,
I
which
know.
makes him the
That's nuts.
same age as Banks. So I think personally that they should just throw him on the outside, stop dicking around with him in the slot, and see if he can do that. Because he's young enough, he hasn't done enough shit where you should be able to re-sign him next year. Where if he shows promise there and you can re-sign him for like cheap, then just do it for depth.
And the league is not banging down his door
That's
to
what I
come
mean.
somewhere else. Yeah,
His name is unknown around the league. So,
that's true.
and you got nothing back there. So I view this position, the outside corner spot, as like dire, right? Like this is a all hands like they needed to do something major here, and I think attacking it with Paulson Adebo is just the right kind of move.
I agree.
I didn't want to draft a corner to fix this.
Drafting a corner that goes against the theory of they have to do something. I don't think that you know this administration thinks they have enough time to wait for another cornerback to feel himself in this league. I think going and spending the money for a cornerback is their indication that we need to do something right now.
Yeah, I agree. How I would have done this maybe would be to deprioritize this to getting someone a little bit less expensive that's maybe just like a veteran guy that can maybe a little bit older because 25 this is a pretty young dude, hasn't been in the league that long.
Mhm.
um I probably would have went cheaper and older veteran, and then saved that money to throw into the defensive line. You know what I mean? To go maybe swinging for the fences there, and just generally put the cornerback position off. Maybe for like a year, and just maybe if you focus on your pass rush, they don't have to be superstars or anything. But I don't hate this move at all. Um, I I
I,
I think
I
that
think
this
when
is a good
I
move.
I think when something is dire, as you is explained it to be, I think you can't go wrong with addressing it, even if it means sacrificing something else. If it's dire, it needs to be addressed.
Yeah,
So
I mean that's fair.
I'm fine with it.
I probably, I don't know. You know me. I prioritized getting the offensive line in order, and I was worried about the defensive line doing some of the heavy lifting for the cornerback. But this is a move I can absolutely get behind. So,
It's fine.
um, rotating into the slot position, Drew Phillips, kind of the only guy. I don't want to include Cordell Flott there because he's bad there. But if we want to add, talking about him, but he's not very good at it. So. You pretty much got Drew Phillips, who's been a shining spot on the defense. There's no depth behind him. He still has some coverage concerns. He's still young. He got hurt last year, so he had to miss some time. Um,
You're right on the edge of the precipice with this position.
yeah, he is signed through 2027, which is good. But to me, the way I looked at this when I first assessed the roster was that I would address this probably with two veterans to cheaper deals while you keep developing Phillips. And this is just, guys in the position that can teach him a little bit and also just provide depth and, allow you to move into a dime package. What do you think about the slot position, Drew Phillips, et cetera?
This is where I think if rather than maybe skimping a little bit on a cornerback to have that money go to the defensive line, I think if you're going to skimp a little on one corner, I think you reallocate that money in the secondary. You keep in the secondary. There's everything. Each position we talked about, it's like we have one guy, and then we have no depth behind it.
Hmm.
So we I'd rather kind of fill in the depth issues first, because that to me is like, if the one guy is out, we're completely screwed. And we've been having a habit the last couple of years of getting guys off the street, and we've seen the disaster results with that. So this is something that they may even have to dumpster dive a little bit to get something, but I still think they need to get another body in there to be a rotation piece.
Yeah, I don't know if I articulated it very well, but that's essentially what I'm saying too. And
Mhm.
again, like, even if you're getting the quote unquote dumpster divey kind of guy now, getting him now is still ultimately better. Like, addressing the fact that you don't have depth now early is still better than dumpster diving him when the guy gets hurt and you have like a week. You're picking from whoever is just available that week. They have a quick tryout, they have to learn the defense, and then they have to start or be a
Right,
backup or do something.
right.
Get them now. Get them now. Get
There's
them
an
in
off season
camp.
for a reason. It's
Yeah.
to prepare for a season, and you want to, especially in the backfield, where they all have to work together. It's important, especially in the slot too.
And there's so much communication. I mean, even
Hmm.
in whatever, there's communication all the time, but this defense, particularly with disguised coverages, that communication can fuck up every single play. You know what I mean?
Sure. Uh-huh.
um what I think is kind of cool is, I think that they sort of kind of half-assed addressed the depth already without really having to do anything, and it's going to kind of transition us. um I think that Javon Holland is kind of a versatile, athletic guy, that he
Hmm.
allows you to rotate your coverages, and he can let you do some things by moving down into the. I mean, you have, I know Dane Belton is not somebody that people are like, oh, he's really good on the field, or whatever, but like, he's sort of a ball hawk for a reason, by just being sort of generally in the right place at the right time. And
Hmm.
if it's, I'm just saying, I would prefer, the safety position be addressed, with other veterans as well, whatever. But I do think that Javon Holland's abilities allows him to kind of flex into a dime spot or a nickel spot, or it allows you to be creative with a solution in case somebody gets hurt and you need to address depth,
I'd
which is
rather
kind of
I'd,
cool.
I'd rather him slide down to that than, again, having to dumpster dive to find that
Exactly.
that summer one. We're trying to get out of the dumpster diving business, folks.
Right. So I think that if you attack the slot position with like a solid addition there, I don't know, like Jordan Lewis or something, like somebody who's maybe been a starter before and doesn't really have the chops to play a 17 game season, I think that Javon Holland allows that to be enough.
I know your philosophy on drafting versus free agents for corners, but in the slot, are you a little more lenient towards drafting?
Yeah, I am, because I don't want to say their responsibilities are more lenient or whatever. I just think they're a little bit more straightforward
Mm,
inside. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot more zone coverage inside where you're funneling things inside. There's a lot more reliance on,
more help. Yeah.
there's more help for sure, because there's more traffic on the inside, but even there's more, because there's less room to work with. There's more ability to let your traits shine and cover up inability. You know what I mean?
And also, there's less danger if you screw up too. Like, if you're on if you're on the outside and you blow a coverage, it's probably going to be a touchdown.
Yeah.
You blow a coverage in the slot, it may be a big play, but I don't. The chances of it all of a sudden going for 7 or going for 6 are not as great, or disastrous it would be on the outside.
I just think that on a down by down basis, like, or even a game in game out basis, like, most teams, their best wide receiver is going to be on the outside.
Agreed.
Occasionally, you're going to run into the Rams and you have to play Cooper Cup. And when you do that, you just game plan for it. It's like, oh,
Hmm.
we can't leave
Exactly.
him one on one with him. We're going to have to figure something out there. And of course, you do that with your outside receivers too, but they're so far outside, there's a lot less you can do without affecting it. You get what I'm saying.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but with the safety spot, I think with Tyler Nubin having a pretty decent rookie campaign, a quiet one, it would be kind of silly to view him as anything definite right now.
Hmm.
Um, we said
Nice
Dane.
start. A nice start to his career, but let's see the development continue and the improvement.
Absolutely. Dane Belton at best, in an ideal situation, I mean, is a special teamer first, and then kind of a guy who is functional as
Mm-hmm,
a
mm-hmm.
starter for here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing else in the roster. And I kind of thought that Jason Pinnock was someone that his time here, he's delivered every time he was asked to. He kind of earned his place here to stay. Something small probably, but he didn't stay. He went to, I think, the
San
Niners.
Francisco. San
Yeah.
Francisco. Cranky
Um,
wife is happy they actually got one player after the mass exodus of what left San Francisco.
yeah. I mean, he was not someone that needed to stay. I don't think that you
Mm-hmm.
have the same kind of impetus, forgetting numbers, but I mean, just trying to kind of compare things. Situationally, it's a little bit the same as trying to retain Darius Slayton, but I don't view it. It's not that level. Like, you didn't need to do it the same way you needed to do it with Darius Slayton.
Correct.
Um, Javon Holland, I am a little surprised that they swung on a safety. Not because they let Xavier McKinney walk the year before, like everyone else seems to think.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't think that they were going to prioritize that kind of money there. Like, I expected like an edge rusher for this kind of money or something. Or like, a defensive tackle to play next to Dexter Lawrence for this kind of money.
I guess they thought it was the easiest path of getting something was to fortify the back end as opposed to the up front. So I kind of look at those two big signings, him and David, as a package signing kind of.
Oh, me too. But
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
weird, you know what I mean? Like, they are veterans, but they're really young veterans. You know what I mean? So like, they still haven't, in my opinion, like signed old Ben to the roster.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I still think that that's missing. I don't know if you feel that too. Like, everyone hates this because it's a Dave Gettleman kind of guy, but like Logan Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, functional, if, has to play a lot of downs, that's not good. But if he has, fill and role, but he's a leader, he is a veteran, he, gets the group together. That shit's important. You know what I mean?
Remember, don't assume they weren't trying to get guys like that. It's just that's how free agent ends up. You put your bids in for these guys, and you know this is a pretty young team. You're right. It is a very young team, and you know having a leader. You said it earlier also that you didn't want people to think that you're overvaluing it. I don't think there's an overvalue to that at all. But again, though, an older player has a different perspective on you know, his career and what is left. And am I going for one more paycheck or one more shot to win? And the one more shot to win may not come here. So
I just, the you're 100% right. I'll read off the age groups, the ages for the secondary.
mhm.
24, 24, 24, 26, 26, 25, 24, 25, and they've added a 25 and a 25. So again, you're signing guys at the prime of their like athletic career, you know what I mean? But they still haven't added like, you know, that rock
Is it
solid veteran.
this is another example, I think, going against the narrative of this administration is trying to win now or else.
You think so?
They're setting this up potentially for a unit that's going to be together for a couple of years, and they're going to grow. You know, 3 years from now, those ages all of a sudden become 27, 27, 28, 27 into their prime. So
Well,
this is almost
okay,
like look.
all
It's
right.
almost like looking like at a long. I'm looking at this as a longer term, not this year or bust, but we're planting this defense to grow together. And if everything works out and everybody keeps their jobs, the coordinator stays. We have continuity after a few years. We're gonna have a pretty solid. That's the way I interpret the way this is
That's an
going.
interesting way to look at it because I looked at it as, they spent big money, right? Like they went out and they got a guy to play right now for $54 million over 3 years and another guy to play for over 3 years for $45 million. But I do see that you're viewing it as these guys are still at somewhat market value and under the big numbers. Although I mean Javon
They
Hollins is
they
pretty
target
close to McKinney, but
they had a target profile what they were looking for, and these guys
but
fit that
you're
profile.
saying is that if these guys grow the way they hope they will in 3 years, they're going to hit the market for their big payday and go somewhere else
we'll worry about 3 years in 3 years.
Well,
Three
of
years
course. Well, I
is an
mean,
eternity in the
but
NFL.
I'm saying the optimist point of view is by then in 3 years you've found replacements either via the draft or via other alternate means, so that you don't feel that you need to pay their market price in 3 years when they
Exactly.
hit their prime. So you view this sort of as like a pre-prime.
Exactly. And then the goal would
Okay.
be in 3 years that they're going to hit the market after this team has made a significant playoff run because
Hmm.
they've grown together, they've matured, they've been better, and then they're becoming a solid defensive unit.
I
Yeah,
see.
I'll worry about that in 3 years. And again, we don't know in 3 years the cap may go up another 20% or something. There's a lot of variables down the line, but again, I look at this as this profile of okay, they're not cheap, but they're young.
Hmm.
And we have a lot of time left with these cats to be together.
Really interesting take, because that's really what I wanted to get to is if any of the free agent signings thus far have really indicated to you that they are swinging for this year, or I guess in any way operating out of character. Personally, I think that Joe Shane, Brian Dable, there is no super. I mean, there are some patterns, but they have, in my opinion, altered the way that they do things each year. And remember, they're both first time at this job, GM and head coach.
Mhm.
I think that they've reassessed the way they do things each year and they've made some changes. So it's a little difficult for me to see a lot of patterns, but you don't see them as this going off plan at all.
I think, in spite of what the perception is from the media, from fans, from everybody, I think that Dable and Shane have a more comfort level that they are not on the hot seat that we all think they are. I think they got assurances from Mara that keep doing your thing. I really think that because the easiest indicator that they are swinging for a home run and trying a quick fix is they would have overspent for a quarterback.
Probably
you know,
Stafford, right? Like the
yeah,
Stafford thing would have probably happened.
they would have, emptied the war chest and say, we will sign you for X amount going. We will give you a boatload of draft picks. We'll give you whatever you want to get him. And the fact that they didn't blow their load on Stafford you know, or even Aaron Rodgers just saying, we're going to make you an offer you can't refuse. Didn't happen. If they made an offer you couldn't refuse, wouldn't refuse. It'd be a giant right now. So to me, the quarterback was that was the kind of the bellwether of, are they really just trying to save their asses this year and be competitive immediately, or are they still building towards their plan? And
Makes
and,
sense
and
to
all
me,
and,
man.
and
Yeah.
all and all these other moves they've done since then, there's nothing on here that's like, I'm building the dream team for this year. We're gonna go from, or being like a Colorado with Deion Sanders, like all of a sudden I'm going for it right now. Just complete. There's no indication of this at all.
I agree with that for sure. I mean, just going their biggest hauls being Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo.
Those are nice hauls.
Exactly.
The-
I mean, if
Let's put it this way:
to a certain stretch, your third biggest thing is Darius Slayton.
are
Your
are are any of those signings? In ESPN on their webpage, it was out on the right side, like the top headlines, and there's bullets of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Are any of those signings in that
no,
top five of bullets? No,
no.
exactly. So that to me, if they're flying, they are, they seem like they're high cost and stuff, but they're not impact signings that are like going to shake the football world at all.
Hmm.
And if they're trying to truly save their jobs, you know, they are going to be something that not just they're going to talk about on, football shows, but that's what Stephen A. Smith is going to jump in and have his 2 cents about. And none of this is close.
Well, last thing before we end this episode,
Mhm.
are they playing with fire with the quarterback spot at this point?
No, I think, I think they're going to draft a quarterback. I think anything right now. I think I think they were serious about going after Stafford. I don't think they were going to, again, at all costs get him, but I think they were serious for it. I think the plan B was, you know, forget all this. I know they brought in the guy whose name I won't mention into the camp today. And bringing in, second Joe Flacco's. They're talking all that bullshit. I think I think they're going to draft a quarterback. I think the likelihood went up more and more if they didn't get the guys they wanted to, and I think now they're kind of dumpster diving a little bit for relatively in the quarterback situation. I think they're going to draft a quarterback.
Very, very interesting. I don't think that they have done themselves too much of a disservice by waiting thus far. So I'm not panicking. I am
I'm not.
refreshing my feed when I
I'm
can.
re- I'm anxious. I'd like this. I want this kind of non-story to be over with.
Yeah.
And I hearing these people just screaming of just like I need to know and make a decision. It's like it's also March 18th. We haven't had the draft yet. Nobody's behind right now. If Aaron Rodgers wants to wait another week, 2 weeks, wait till after the draft, see what his market is. It doesn't matter. And there's no OTAs now. There's none of this stuff is happening. We just want to know because we want to know. We're anxious.
Mm-hmm.
But I honestly think if they didn't get the guy that they wanted to, I think they're going to assess that. If we draft somebody, it's going to be cheaper. You know, and we'll see how it goes. Honestly,
I don't want to make this long episode any longer, so that's all I've got on this. But we're going to continue this talk, on each of these guys and in the context of the rooms that they're in and what we thought about the roster when we talked about those spots. Next week, obviously, we're going to continue free agent news at that time as well, and
maybe we'll break in with a special when the quarterback, if we do sign a quarterback, if it's interesting enough to we may have an emergency episode or not, but.
Oh yeah, I mean, if it's any of the two guys that's been
Well, the saving grace is that the quarterback, who I won't even say his name, came and went today, and he doesn't have a contract, so that makes me feel better.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there's a possibility of a breaking news one with a quarterback, as well. We'll see.
Crystal ball. This time next week, do we have a quarterback?
No.
Agreed.
I think that the high ticket veterans right now are waiting for the draft, so I think it's going to be a long time.
I agree. I think so too. I think get off of Aaron Rodgers' lawn and wait for him to come out. Don't go to the Vatican and wait for the white smoke to come up. Making his decision. I don't think it's happening anytime soon. It's not in their best interest to do that.
Exactly.
Right,
I think it's just not in their best interest to sign anywhere until after the draft and they see the intentions the team's asking them. And I think without those guys moving, I think the backup guys aren't going to move either.
Mm-hmm.
Your second tier guys like Voldemort and Joe Flacco. So, are you too old to just get that was a pretty good joke right there?
I'm quite old.
Okay, yeah, all right. If you don't want to refer to the quarterback from Cleveland that's on the market right now, you can just refer to him as Voldemort. He is he who must not be named. We don't speak his name.
I'll just call him a fucking asshole and move
All right,
on with
there
it.
you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. So that's it. Cranky Fan, too cranky for a Harry Potter joke that I'm sure all of you understood but him.
I'm a fucking old guy, man.
I mean, there's just some things that are just in the zeitgeist, man. I mean, my mom knows who R2-D2 is.
They're about the same size, actually.
That's actually correct. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Of course, like, subscribe, whatever. You guys know the deal. We'll see you guys next time. Until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.